Hi there, guys. My name is Walker Derby. I'm one of the assistant directors in Career Services here.
And I'm Grant Langdon, the other assistant director at Career Services.
Nice. We're here to talk to you a little bit today about some interview prep. So some skills that you might take with you going into interviews now or in the future. A little bit about what that looks like. We'll be talking through some sample questions you might hear and things like that. So let's get started. So typically I'd ask the audience, have you ever had an interview? Most people here probably have. What went well? What could have gone better? Grant, you got any good interview stories out there?
I've got a bad interview story.
Perfect. What is it?
Where I came into a group interview and everybody was sitting on the couch and chairs around, and there was the hot seat, and I just coming in with my coat, and I was like, oh yeah, we'll take your coat. And I was like, okay, sure. And I tossed it at them and I tossed it very poorly, and it went over their head. And I was like, oh my God, did I just already bomb this interview before I even said anything?
I don't know that I've ever heard that. So there's a moral there. Don't throw your coat at the people that are interviewing you. Yeah. Good stuff. So let's figure it out. So you've got an interview. Fantastic. What now? Step one is to get reacquainted with yourself. So it may have been a little bit of time since you've applied for the position, since you've had a chance to look at your resume, or maybe even the job description of the position you're applying for. So get all that stuff back out, go over what you submitted, make sure that you're reacquainting yourself with the material that the people that are doing the interview are going to have, so that you don't forget what you sent in. Second, pump yourself up. Go listen to your favorite song if you have a jam that you like to listen to. Body language is super important. I think we're maybe familiar with power poses. I think you're a big power pose guy, aren't you?
Yeah. I found power poses to be really helpful for interviews, for exams. Literally, before I'd go into an exam, I'd go into the bathroom and just stand tall and just yeah, I've got this. And that was my, and it made me honestly feel more confident walking into an exam, which made me calm and I could remember things better. Definitely.
So whatever works for you, those are just a few examples, but get excited. This is a good opportunity for you. So make sure that you're getting yourself pumped up. Step 3, plan your peak moments. So there's an interesting phenomenon called the peak and end rule, which is essentially that people are more apt to remember how they felt during the highlight of an event as well as at the end of the event. So we can think about our favorite movies, and you're going to remember the climax, and you're going to remember how you felt when the credits rolled. The other good example that I use is if you're on a vacation somewhere and the weather's been poor all week, it's been raining, it's been really lousy, you haven't had a lot of fun, but you've got one really amazing day where the sun comes out, you get to do a really incredible hike or whatever it may be, and then, you go on with your vacation, you get home, you're going to remember that peak day, that awesome day as standing out among kind of a sea of what might have not been so good times. And the same thing is with an interview, right? So the people that are interviewing you are going to remember kind of that peak moment, how they felt during your sort of big pitch, as well as at the end. So your peak moment can be a certain story that really is going to drive the interviewer to remember you amidst a bunch of other candidates. That could be, your inspiration for getting into the industry in the first place, or a really special point in time that's very unique to you that's really going to stand out. So think a little bit about that. It might differ depending on which organization you're interviewing with, but try to figure out if there's something that really sets you apart personally that you can bring to the table. And have that ready to pull out of your back pocket. All right, before the interview, we're going to want to do a little bit of research and planning. So Google the company or whatever your favorite search engine is, and look up some hot topics, news, current events, some things that you can bring out during the interview that show that you've taken the time to really sit down and do your research and get to know the organization before you even set foot in the front door. Visit their website, check out their mission, vision, their employees, their culture, things like that. If they have, some media channels, an Instagram page or something like that, check that out as well. And familiarize yourself a little bit about the type of culture that they're conveying outwardly. This is a really good opportunity too, because it might help you decide, yeah, this place looks really great, or, ooh, I'm seeing some things here that I'm not 100% certain about, and I definitely want to address that during my interview.
There's another great thing you could do is you can check on LinkedIn and see who's working there, who might be the people that are in the interview that'll be interviewing you, and what are some of their backgrounds, some of their work history. You might even find some trends like that they typically hire from certain places or from certain universities, and that can be information in your arsenal.
Yeah, so that's a really good idea. So once you've done that, once you've checked out some of those avenues, prepare your thoughts. What could you compliment about the company? What do you want to know more about? Try to keep it relevant to the position that you're applying for, but definitely make sure that you've got your questions that you want answered ready to go ahead of time. Okay, a couple more things to do before the interview. Anticipate what might happen during the interview. So jot some notes. If you're not a note jotter, feel free to bring in copies of your resume, things like that. I get asked the question a lot, is it weird if I bring a notepad with me during the interview? Does that make me look unprepared or something like that? And absolutely not. Some people are really good at retaining information up here. Some people are really good at retaining information after they've written it down. Whatever is going to help you be the best person that you can be, that's the avenue you're going to want to take. Also, once you have the job, it's likely you're going to be using those same techniques, to employ information and retain information when you're doing it. So it's not out of the ordinary to be using those skills right there in the interview. Which skills might the company want to see in you? Check out the job posting again. Again, go and review the company and organizational culture online, and then write some stuff down. If there's some things that directly apply to you, make sure that you're going to bring those up. And the last bullet point here is pretty important. Capitalize on all experiences, not just work related, right? There's a lot of stuff that you've done outside of the professional sphere that could be directly applicable to some of the questions they might ask you. So think about student orgs you've been involved with. Think about maybe some of the interpersonal relationships you've developed on a group project in class or from your time living in the dorms, things like that.
Yeah, I think you think about the organization's mission, their vision, their philosophies, their values, and there might be some things that you're doing in your free time that show that you don't just work your values, but you live them, and you're volunteering that also aligns with that organization.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, really good insight. Okay, a few more things that you can do before the interview to kind of make some power plays here. Grant had mentioned earlier, maybe getting the names of the individuals you might be interviewing with. This is a really strong move. We did an interview in our office a little bit after I started here, and one of the candidates walked in and she had an addressed letter to each of us by name, and she set it down in front of us during the interview, and it was a really cool moment. I'll never forget it. It made me feel really special that she'd taken the time to kind of get to know me before we'd even met face to face. I'm not saying you have to do that every time, but it can help build a little confidence if you know who you're going to be speaking with. Make sure you know where you're going. This can be important if you're interviewing maybe an area of the world that you've never been, or in a town you've never seen before, on a campus that you've never been on. Try to get there early so that you can familiarize yourself with where you're headed. Kind of goes without saying, but turn off your cell phone. General reminder there. And then bring extra copies of your resume, reference list, etc., notepad and pen. You might think you're interviewing with one or two people. Turns out at the last minute they called in a few others that were interested, and maybe they haven't had a chance to review your application materials yet, so it can be really nice to have extra copies for people who might be there or haven't had a chance to print it and look at it. Keep one for yourself as well, right? It's a good idea to have that resume in front of you so when they're asking you questions about it, you remember what you put down.
I can tell you how many times I was in an interview and I had a resume in my lap and they would ask me a question and I would blank for a moment on what to respond, and I'd glance down at my resume and oh yeah, I could, something from that job.
Yeah, it's really easy in the moment to kind of forget, and get a little maybe frozen up. So having that resume in front of you to help break through some of those gaps is really cool. Okay, so during the interview, you're sitting down with one or two people, maybe it's a panel. You'll want to have your elevator pitch ready. So if you don't know what an elevator pitch is, the concept is you just got onto an elevator with the person that is the CEO or the director of the organization that you want to work with, and you have that elevator ride to explain to them who you are and why you want the position. So I like to think of it as a 30-second overview of you. It's your name, where you are, where you've come from, and where you're going. So the example that I like to use is my own, I guess, because I'm most familiar with it. But it's the one that I used when I got this job here in Northern. I had come from a recruiting background at UP Health System, and about 5 years of recruiting there. And so during the series of interviews that I had for this position, I think we were on 4 different panels throughout the course of the day. So I talked to a lot of people, and it was the same thing. Tell us a little bit about yourself. So, well, my name is Walker. I've got my master's degree here from Northern Michigan University. I'm currently doing recruiting at our local hospital. I'm really excited to take all of the knowledge that I've gained about recruiting processes and things like that and bring it back into the academic sphere to help people transition their university backgrounds into their career goals. Short, simple, tells you why I want the job. What do you think? Would you hire me with that one?
Yeah, and it's great because it ties your experience to the requirements for the job, like what you're going to be expected to do. So that's a great connection.
Thank you. So in short, be prepared to explain why you want the job. So we'll be going over a few sample questions here, just to kind of get your brains thinking a little bit about what might come up and the best way to answer those. But before we do that, a few tips about answering those. We always want to give honest answers. Don't necessarily need to overshare, but definitely don't lie during the interview or omit any truths. Be as honest and forthright as you can. I think most of us are probably from the Midwest, so this next bullet point is a little tricky because we're naturally not very braggy around here. I think we're pretty humble people. But this is your time to shine. So it's okay to brag a little bit, and if you don't like the word brag, it's okay to lean into those accomplishments that you've got, right? You've got an education backing you up. You've likely got some successes, whether they're academic or they're in previous roles, previous job roles. So just make sure that you're recognizing those for the value that they have, because it's important stuff. And then maintain eye contact. That shows that you're paying attention, you're engaged. It's a sign of respect. So be aware of that as well. If you're, one who may have a little bit of trouble with that, you can come in and see us and we'll work through some techniques to help you, at least get through the interview when it comes to maintaining eye contact.
I'll never forget a time where I was in a panel interviewing a candidate, and the candidate would literally turn and face their body at the person and asking the question and respond thoughtfully by looking right to them, and then somebody else would ask a question and she would turn and look at them directly in the eye and do that. And it just turned out so well because you felt like you were having a conversation with them, and then they'd go and have a conversation with someone else, and you could just tell they were so intently giving attention to everybody there. I was like, wow, this is what we want.
Yeah, that's pretty high level, but I like that. That's pretty cool. Mm-hmm. Wait, so you were on the interview panel for that?
Yeah.
Cool. I bet that made you feel pretty good.
It did. And I'd never seen that before. It's like, wow. And it was for a job where we wanted people that could make good, strong connections with somebody. And she was demonstrating that in the interview. Very impressive.
That's cool. I like that example a lot. Okay. A few other things during the interview. Be yourself. Remember that you're deciding if the company is going to be a good fit for you. Yes, they're interviewing you. They invited you there because they are interested in potentially offering you a job. But you're also learning a little bit about whether or not these are people that you want to work with. Is the position that you're now talking about something that you see yourself doing for the short, mid, long term? So you're interviewing them as well. Have those peak and end moments ready. If you don't get the opportunity to bring that up organically because maybe they didn't ask something that tied it in, you'll have an opportunity at the end to bring that up. So we'll talk a little bit about that too. Take notes. Write down the names of the people that you're interviewing with. If you're like me, you don't remember names very well, so I'm always writing stuff down. And then write some follow-up questions. If somebody's telling you something really cool or interesting about the organization, and you want to make sure that you have the opportunity to follow up, you don't necessarily need to interrupt them right then and there, but make a note of it so that you can circle back on it later. Because, if you're in a long interview day, you may forget some of the things that were talked about an hour prior. So write down the interesting things that you hear.
And thinking about even the people, you'll get a chance to ask them about some questions, and they'll bring up like projects they're working on, challenges they're working on overcoming, and you can write those down. And even in your thank you notes, you can bring up those specifics on like about the projects they're working on, their interests, their background, that type of stuff.
Absolutely, 100%. Finally, be prepared to answer behavioral-based questions. We're going to talk a little bit about what those are. So behavioral-based questions, you may have heard some of them. I've got a couple examples here. Tell me about a time when you disagreed with a team member. Have you ever failed at something? What did you learn from that experience? These questions are designed to offer the interviewer some insight into how you've handled situations in the past, and they're going to use that as a potential indicator for how you might handle a similar situation going forward. There's not really like a right or wrong answer here. They just want to know where your mentality and your attitude might fit into their team. So again, honesty is really important. You'll often be asked to take an assessment prior to interviewing. They're generally about 100 questions long, maybe a little more than that. And it's a sliding scale. They'll ask you, they'll provide a statement, I should say, about something, and then you'll either strongly disagree to strongly agree with it. These aren't designed to be disqualifying assessments. Again, they're just designed to help the interviewer guide the questions so that they can talk about some of the trends that they see. So you want to be honest about those as well. From those assessments, they're often then generated a series of questions that apply directly to you. And so those may come up. And as you're going, you can use the STAR method to help you answer these questions. If you're an acronym person,
Yeah, tell me all about
all right, STAR method. So you might have heard about this in some of your classwork, maybe not. And you don't have to like memorize this, but it's kind of a stepwise process for coming up with some of these answers. So STAR stands for situation, task, action, and result. So you set the scene, well, that's the situation. The task, what was designed to be happening. The action, what did you do? And then what was the outcome? So I've got an example here you can take a look at. Tell me about a time you faced conflict while working on a team. So your answer might be this. We were having these unproductive, scattered staff meetings. No one was really able to get their point across. No one knew why they were there. So what did you do? The task. Well, I streamlined the staff meetings to drive engagement. I came up with some agendas. We made sure we had the talking points all laid out in front of us. We took the time then, this is the action, dedicated some time in the next meeting to discuss what people liked about that, what the expectation was going forward, and then we took everyone's ideas and put them together. The result was more patient, dedicated, and engaged staff, and the meetings were more productive overall. So this is twofold. One, it answers the question. Two, it showcases some of your skills in your answer. So in this case, we're looking at organization, inclusiveness, and your ability to implement new process. So not only does it give your skills a bit of a highlight, but it also shows that you're able to take on these tasks and get results done. So here are a couple of other interview questions that you might come up with. We're not necessarily going to go over the answers to these because they're different for everyone depending on the situation, but tell me about your proudest accomplishment. This one can be a little bit tricky, again, for us Midwesterners because we don't like to brag, but everyone's got something that has happened in their life that they're proud of, whether that's academically or maybe sports-related, athletic. Again, not a wrong answer, but they're just looking for you to be able to comment on a time that you felt really good about something and how that made you feel. Give me an example of a time you managed numerous responsibilities. How did you handle that? Very obvious time management question, right? How do you figure out what's most important? What's your process for getting through multiple tasks? What are your weaknesses? This one's a bit tricky, but we have a solution. Grant, do you want to talk about Clifton's strengths real quick?
Yeah, so in order to respond to any of these interview questions, you got to know yourself, and you want to be like reflecting your strengths and what you naturally do well in a lot of these questions or these answers. So we use a tool called Clifton Strengths that is a pretty thorough assessment that will then tell you basically these are your top 5 of 34 strengths. And because there's so much detail to them, it gives you a lot of insight into just the way that you react to situations, the way you think about things, the way you prioritize objects or things or people. It's like so detailed. It goes like beyond that you're just like good at math or sports or athletics or anything like that, but it's like why you would be drawn to that and the way that you actually do those activities. It's just incredible. And each strength has things that are easy for you to highlight, but there's also things for you to consider that I don't want to call them weaknesses, but they're definitely things that, like, if I am more analytical, that's my number one strength. And so I'm always analyzing and breaking down complex situations and trying to find how it works. But that doesn't necessarily work as well with people situations. And I've made a lot of like mistakes in conversation because I'm trying to analyze something that in a non-empathetic way. So an example of me using my weaknesses is like, I can say that I've had to learn about the way that I interact with people and trying to like bring extra empathy and validation in my conversations, because my tendency is to just look at the logical, analytical side of a situation and the people second. But I have to accommodate my own preferences, my own strengths and weaknesses. They work together.
So the Clifton Strengths Assessment is something that we can do here in Career Services. Reach out to us about that if it's something you're interested in. You take a survey that's pretty comprehensive. I think it takes about 15, 20 minutes. And then you meet with Katie in our office. She's our Clifton Strengths coach, and she'll walk you through them. It's a super powerful tool. It's been impactful not just at work, but in my personal life as well, to kind of help me understand my communication style, the way that I see and process ideas versus the way other people do. Tons of benefit to it. So the reason we bring this up here is because it can really help you answer the weaknesses question. When you're asked this question, no one's looking for you to kind of trash talk yourself. The idea is not to draw out like, oh, here's the one thing I'm really bad at. What they're really asking with this question is, what is something you recognize as being an obstacle that you might have had to overcome, and how have you done that in a way that's positive? So Grant had a really good example there. I'll share mine as well. I tend to be a really big picture person. I like seeing sort of the high level landscape of ideas, and I admittedly get a little bit intolerant of the details, and I know that. So when I answer this question, I say, hey, I recognize that I'm not as engaged with the details of an idea so much as the big picture and end result. And so what I really enjoy doing is surrounding myself with team members who are a little more analytical and who are a little more apt to see those details, so that when I get a little bit too carried away and too far downstream, they're able to pull me back and ground me in the details that I might have missed. And conversely, I'm able to help pull them along during situations where maybe they're getting a little too far into the weeds and we need to start making some steps forward. So that's my example. A couple other sample questions here. Why should we hire you? What they're really asking is, why should we hire you over another candidate? So again, remember those peak moments, right? What sets you apart? What makes you unique? A few others. Describe a situation in which you recognized a potential problem as part of an opportunity. What did you do? So again, this one's a problem-solving question. It's designed to probe at whether or not you're able to turn some negatives into positives. What motivates you to work in this field? Why are you interested? If we were to ask your peers in previous jobs to describe you, what might they say? This one's really easy because you can just go ask your friends like, hey, candidly tell me what you would say about me. If you have any questions about any of these and how to answer them, or a more comprehensive list of questions, come and see us. We're happy to talk to you on an individual level about how you may go about examining some of these questions during an interview. Okay, so you've made it through the hard part. Your interview's over. How do you close it out? Have your questions ready. They should always ask you, hey, do you have any questions for us, or was there something that you were hoping we would get to talk about that we didn't get a chance to? And it's kind of a bad look if you're like, no, I can't think of anything. Again, this is why it's important to write notes. Maybe you heard something that you want to follow back on. This is the opportunity for you to bring out that kind of peak moment if you haven't had the chance to do it. But here's a good example. I noticed this upcoming industry challenge. How is your organization going to respond? Here are my thoughts on what we might be able to do going forward with whatever this issue is. So this answer kind of highlights that you've already taken the time to kind of look up what might be coming down the road and that you're already thinking about what it would look like to be on the team, preparing to solve that problem.
Okay, some ways that I've found out what those challenges are is if there are some professional organizations that are for your industry, you can just Google like professional organizations and whatever your major is basically, and you'll find that there's quite a few, and you can try to join them and see what they're talking about. And they're almost always talking about problems that are industry-wide that different organizations are trying different approaches on tackling.
Yeah, I like that a lot. And you're right, there is a professional organization for literally everything out there. So really good idea. Okay. Ask if they need anything more from you. Hopefully they don't. Hopefully they have everything, but they may have forgotten something as well. And then ask what the next steps are in the process. This is really for your benefit. You know, we're really excited when we interview for an opportunity that we really want to, you know, I'm expecting a call back in the next 6 minutes. I'm going to leave the room. They're going to call me and tell me I have the job. But maybe they have another 3 or 4 weeks of interviews lined up. And so setting the expectations about what timelines look like can put you at ease a little bit and help reduce some of those anxieties. And it can also help them understand where you are in the hiring process. You know, hey, I'm ready to go to work in the next few days. You know, you just let me know. Thank them for their time, for their consideration, and don't forget to acknowledge everybody. So if you engaged with, you know, an office worker at the front desk, you know, make sure you thank them on the way out, things like that. It shows, you know, it's a great deal of respect to be able to say thanks to everybody.
Because the thing to consider is they might ask that front desk worker, like, oh, what did you think about the candidate? And if you blew them off and didn't give them any attention, that they'll say so. And that looks pretty bad on you.
Absolutely. Okay. After the interview, write a thank you note. This doesn't have to be a card or a letter. It can be a quick email follow-up just saying, you know, hey, thanks again for your time. Really excited about the opportunity. Use names and titles. Hopefully you wrote those down. And then spell and grammar check, right? Very important. Pay attention to possible correspondence from them. They may be sending you a follow-up email. They may be calling you. They may be shooting you a text. Make sure if they are going to call you, or if you think they're going to call you, that you're able to accept voicemail. There's nothing more frustrating than calling somebody to offer them a job and it goes to voicemail time and time again.
Or the voicemail isn't set up.
Or the voicemail isn't set up, or it's full, or, you know, what have you. So just make sure that that's ready. Prepare yourself for the offer or the no call or, you know, letter. You might not get every job that we interview for. Hopefully you do, but it's okay. If you do get that no call or letter, don't let yourself get discouraged. This was a learning opportunity, and now you have one more interview under your belt. You're going to be that much more confident going in next time. And give yourself some kudos for putting yourself out there. It's not easy to interview. It's not necessarily fun for everybody, but it is one of those necessary steps in the path. So every time you get the chance to do it, you're going to be that much stronger. Finally, what not to do in an interview. Come unprepared. You know, have a working knowledge of the position that you're interviewing for and the products and services that are available from the organization you're interviewing with. Don't appear apathetic. Even if this is like your 3rd interview of the week and you already kind of are thinking, hey, you know what, this company's not really for me. I've already had these other couple interviews that I'm more excited about. You never know what's going to happen down the road when you may need to go back to company number 3 and say, hey, you know I said no the first time, but I'm really excited to examine another opportunity. But they'll remember if in the interview you felt like you didn't care. Don't focus on the wrong things. Again, kind of keep your answers concise and to the point about the position, the company, and yourself. Don't lack self-awareness. Again, this comes back to kind of having those notes in front of you and things like that, so you've got those talking points ready. And then don't sell rather than listen. It's okay to take your time if you don't have an answer right at the front of your brain. An employer would much rather have you say something like, hey, can I have a few minutes or a few seconds to think about that question? I want to make sure that I'm giving you the best answer that I can, versus blurting the first thing that comes to your mind if you're not sure. Another thing about notes is if they ask you a question that jogs a memory, you can say, hey, I've got something for this. I was hoping you'd ask me. Let me look up in my notes what I wanted to say about this because I had something written down. And again, that's not a sign of weakness. That shows you came prepared. So those are kind of my tips and my experiences through the interview process. Grant, do you have anything you'd like to add there at the end?
I think the thing that you'll want to make sure you do is practice talking about every part on your resume. You want to be able to have a little story for every bullet point on your resume, because a lot of the questions might revolve right around. They might say like, oh, tell me about this experience on your resume. I'd love to hear more. And you want to be ready with a story that highlights your strengths, your contributions, and how it relates to the organization and position that you're applying for. And practice makes it so much easier for you to be there in the moment and not like freaking out trying to remember every detail because you haven't like thought about it in months.
Yeah, absolutely. And so one of the things that we really enjoy doing here is sitting down with you, talking through the position that you're interviewing for, positions, and then comparing that to your resume, comparing that to your past experiences, and just making sure that those answers are really polished. So come and see us for mock interviews if that's your style. Grant and I typically tend to, I think, gravitate more towards like, let's figure this out together. But if you want to do a little back and forth and we can sit as your interview panel and put you in the hot seat, we can do that too. Totally up to you. Here's how you can get a hold of us. Handshake is available to all of you. As you know, our schedules are on there. You can schedule with either of us. Get us by phone. Check us out on social media. Yeah, we hope to see all of you in our office. Love to get to know you and help you come up with the best interview plan that you can.